great information. Thank you for all that.
Certainly. I'm glad it's of interest. Thanks so much.
Hey, Cammie.
Hey guys, I have us on record now, so I hope I didn't miss all the good nuggets. But I'm glad to see so many people are showing up and excited. So let's dive right in. I know that most of you know exactly who Dr. James is, but for those of you who do not, you'll hear us spewing a lot of very impressive percentages of how the 400 billion, only 2%. Comes from real estate of the money that goes to nonprofits. All these different percentages we talk about come from a lot of the research that he and his team have been doing for many years. He is the foremost authority on teaching how non-cash assets can 6 times the endowment of nonprofits. And he has mentioned to me, wow, real estate really has been a very underserved a part of the non-cash asset. Thank you for bringing the real agents of change to the world. Let's make a big difference. So our goal as a tribe is to add $1 billion a year to the nonprofit world. That translates into about 2,000 transactions and $50 million of commission to real estate agents, much less what it does for the financial advisors out there. So there's a lot of ways to make money making a difference. This is the honest God way to make money making a difference. We hear that tagline, but what does it really mean? Well, it means something here. So the reason that we have Dr. James with us is because he is also the foremost authority on the right wording, words that work, language, how to come across to people in such a way that they want to take action, that we are helping them emotionally and intellectually. So as he and I were talking about upcoming collaboration that we're doing, the Real Agents of Change with Dr. James, we're going to be putting together some surveys. I think that will be an excellent next step for the nonprofits and for us to send a survey out. And we're going to be putting together some programs that you can go out as Real Agents of Change and talk to financial advisors. And there is no one better to help us with that. So as Dr. James was asking me, well, Cammie, what are they seeing in the marketplace? What are their questions? What is working? What is not working? I said, well, let's just come together and hear it from them. So without further ado, Dr. James, please feel free to take it from here and let's hear what we can do to help them right now.
Okay, great. So let me support everything that Cammie said, and to give you a little bit of a framework, as I've mentioned to Cammie, I'm just getting close to finishing up a large writing project for a book series that will be coming out. And once that's done here in the next few weeks, my major focus is going to be on building out things that are helpful for you, because this is, I think, a really exciting and untapped opportunity. And so we've talked about how do we approach nonprofits, using a survey instrument, building out a PowerPoint presentation for nonprofits, for a nonprofit board, for donors to a nonprofit, and how at each step of the way, we not only are accomplishing potentially great things for the nonprofit, but also creating sources of business and connections with those who have real estate that they are interested in making transactions with. So as we were talking, the very first thing that I want to make sure is that I'm going to be building out tools that hit a felt need for you. So I guess I'm wanting to open it up to start with to say, what would be just kind of some useful things to have in terms of whether that's training or that's products to deliver to nonprofits, or that's slide sets or surveys or whatever it might be, anything that you could share with me in terms of what you think might be helpful, or something you've tried that has worked for you, or something you've tried that didn't work for you. Just any of that kind of information would really help me to try to build out the best tools that can help you along in this process, both from a business building perspective, but also from a nonprofit impact perspective. So Cammie, does that sound kind of like what we were talking about?
Yes, and you just made a great point that I also want to really put a pin in. He is so brilliant. He understands that this is also about building your business in general. So let's be clear, we do want to get donations. We want $1 billion a year, and at an average of $550,000 per donation per transaction, that's a lot. However, you're also going to be meeting high net worth individuals, generous folks, leaders. Look, when you're going in and talking to the nonprofits, every one of them have staff and volunteers and hundreds and thousands of other people you can get in front of that need to buy and sell. So we also want you to know this isn't just about ferreting out a donation. It's about building your business, because there's going to be a lot of business that comes to you even before they understand what a donation of real estate is. Yes?
And just to support that, Cammie, I think the idea is in many cases, we want to do things that will get you in front of people as the expert on real estate. Here I am, I'm the real estate expert. Here's the nonprofit side of it. Here's the charitable tax side of it. Because once you establish that relationship and that role as the expert, I think it has a lot of benefits, both for the nonprofit, but also for building business.
So let's hear some questions. Some of you have been chomping at the bit, just dying to get in front of Dr. James. Just jump in and give everyone a little head start on what you're. Tamisa, I'm going to call on you because you've been one of the most active out in the marketplace. Talk to us about what's worked and what you could use some help with.
So this morning I was actually on a presentation with past president of Planned Giving of Arizona, and she was introducing the idea of real estate gifting or accepting gifts by these nonprofits. So she brought in all the nonprofits that she's been working with, and we had a little interactive review. And I was hoping for a little bit more action feedback from the nonprofits, but I still think that the answer that gave me was that they're still in the dark. And again, it's that if they have their blinders on, they don't have to go there and do that. What I pushed for mostly was the ease and simplicity, the team that takes care of it, does the heavy lifting. Then I was watching some of your videos, Dr. James, that talked about the more simplified the words, the more apt they are to listen or maybe step forward. But are there some key words that, other than donor and no risk and no cost, that could actually make them, have that aha moment?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. So a lot of the work that I do on phrasing deals with donors and what words and phrases do we want to use with donors. And that's where we get that idea that the more financial, transactional, technical, contractual, legal, the more we start with that, the less interested people are in sharing. But if your audience is the nonprofit staff themselves, then that's kind of a different story. That's not that same type of decision. And in many ways, so let me share some stories as to why these kinds of services can be attractive to nonprofit insiders. And there's actually two potential allies. One potential ally is the fundraisers. Now, of course, they want to raise money, but there's another issue, which is fundraisers typically don't want to learn all the complexity. They would rather just get a check. And those that do go, you were talking with some plan giving people, those that do know all the processes, sometimes they get really frustrated in dealing with their internal administration. You know, it's not just the CFO, it's the 12 different levels of approval that everything has to go through. And the donor already has a buyer that's available, but then everything delays 6 months, the buyer goes away, the donor's hacked off, the thing's not sold. And so the fundraiser can oftentimes get very frustrated by that process. So you sort of offer different things to different internal audiences. For the fundraiser, what you offer is speed and simplicity, right? It's just the idea of, and honestly, so I'll share this story. There is a very large research university. I'm not going to tell you who, but one that I work with that they got the fundraisers, the major gift fundraisers, got so frustrated working with their administration that they don't even tell them when they have a real estate gift now. They just run it through an outside organization. Organization gets a check at the end. Everybody's happy. They work with the organization that can, that can make it happen. That is fast on the transaction because they're more likely to end up with a happy donor at the end. Now let's switch that, and there's another potential ally for you, which is not just the fundraiser. Another potential ally is actually the CFO, which is to say, you don't really want to deal with all of this hassle. You don't want the liability of owning real estate. You don't, you're not in the transactions market, the buying and selling, that sort of thing. This is the more professional way to deal with it, because all you have to deal with at the end is a check. And so you're not going to have to worry about, is this a CERCLA super fund site that, you're going to have environmental liability on? Is that, all of these other sorts of things. You don't touch it. All you get is the cash. And so that's an audience that, that has a different reason to be interested, because CFO types are very risk averse, and so you're presenting them an opportunity to be very risk averse on that. So in many ways, these transactions, whether it's for one of the things that we see with donors, and I think the same thing applies to those within a nonprofit, is the first time a donor makes a gift out of their assets rather than just out of disposable income, it's transformational for that donor's point of mind, their reference point. From that point forward, and actually what we see is that after donors do that, there's can be this dramatic transformation in their donations. Well, in the same way, the hard thing to do is the first transaction with a charity, with a nonprofit. Once they see it, they realize how easy this is, and then it can go from there. Now, if you are communicating with the nonprofit insiders, here's one trick that I've used before. And if you want to use it, if you find an opportunity, it can be really powerful. Every charity has publicly available, posted their IRS Form 990s. That's the charity's tax returns. Okay. You can go online. There's half a dozen websites that offer those for free. And what you could do is, if you're getting ready to go talk to a charity, is to look at some of their competitors or those that are in their same sector. Just pull down a few 990s and see if you can find one. And you go to what's called Schedule M, as in Mary, and that shows all of the non-cash gifts that they're receiving. And if you happen to find a competitor that's getting gifts from non-cash, maybe it's stocks, maybe it's real estate, maybe it's something else like this, one thing that's very compelling for that risk-averse insider is that your competition is leaving you behind, right? That here's this other organization that's doing these kinds of gifts. You're not doing those kinds of gifts. So that starts the message of, you know, here's your competitors doing all of this, and, you know, you're getting left behind. And then the second part is, but you can do it very easily because you don't have to create a whole staff that knows how to accept those kinds of real estate gifts. That this is a way to start that out, you know, in a very simple, straightforward manner. So that can work if you find a competitor that's doing a lot of those sort of things when you're speaking to that audience. You know, and Tamisa, as you're talking, it makes me think that, and Cami and I had already talked about this, but it's almost like we need different presentation sets or talking points for each different audience. Like, here's my internal staff, nonprofit staff messages. Here's my board of directors messages, which are going to be the major donors, but also their managers in some sense at a high level. And then here's just my donor presentation, because, you know, as we're talking, those different audiences, the staff, the board of directors, and just donors who are not trustees, there are different messages that I think that would appeal to each of them. Tamisa, thoughts on that?
I totally agree with you. It needs to be segmented, and not only with nonprofit financial advisors, donors, but within each of those, there are their subsections. When I do meet with a fundraiser or for a nonprofit, their last comment is, well, let me run this by the CFO, the board, what have you, and then it gets muddy. My focus has always been, because I work real estate with seniors, my focus has always been to have relationships with financial advisors. So they have been my biggest lead gen for decades. And this, to me, falls right into the charitable giving, falls right into their wheelhouse, more so than discussing first with nonprofits, because the financial planner will know who their clients' causes and favorite charities are. But which brings another question, and then I'll pass the floor on. But another question there is so much from watching your videos of all the different entities and elements to charitable giving, annuities and life tools, and it goes on and gets very thick. But
Yes.
Is there a type or a designation of a financial advisor or wealth manager that is best suited for all of this? Or is that just an in general that they all know, but they may be more savvy in? Is there a designation for learning all of that for them?
Yeah, you know, so there is not widespread designation. There is a CAP, Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy designation. That tends to be more fundraisers, although a few financial advisors have picked that up. And so it's tricky because a lot of, you know, some financial advisors are very connected with this. They know all of the pieces, but many don't. I speak at a lot of financial advisor conferences, and it's not unheard of to have the majority of folks in the room not even know that, you know, if you donate appreciated stock, that avoids the capital gain, and you can immediately repurchase identical shares, not change the portfolio, but wipe out all the capital gain. From a financial advisor perspective, that's sort of lesson number one. And maybe half of them in the audience don't even know that first step. So you are right, there is this mix, and there's not a great designation for it. Now, I think the incentive for the, and Tamisa, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but, you know, I think the sort of, the incentive for a financial advisor is real estate. Look, financial advisors are by and large compensated based on assets under management, okay? Real estate is an asset that I don't get any money from, because as an advisor, I'm not managing it. But if that real estate goes into a donor advised fund, Typically, the advisors can manage those donor advised funds, whether it's through Schwab or other things like that. And all of a sudden, my portfolio grows. So my assets under management grows. So that would be sort of the self-interested incentive for these transactions. If you can get it into the donor advised fund, of course, there's more complex vehicles they could manage inside a charitable remainder trust or potentially a charitable lead trust. But the simplest version would be if it went into a donor advised fund. Tamisa, are you seeing that? Is that or is it, or is that not really on the radar for the advisors you're working with?
No, I agree with you totally. I've talked to probably dozens of them, and some of them are totally like quiet when I bring it up. They're like, oh yeah, it works for some people, but we don't bring it up. I think they need to all ask. I think that should be number one priority, is to ask, not tell people or make them feel like they're judging them if they don't give. But I think they need to have some credibility in the beginning of assessing if they're going to take them on as a new client, or each year when they evaluate their portfolio, that should be something that is asked. But I do find that there are financial advisors it's like, deer in the headlights. They're kind of, we don't really go there. I just think they don't know it. So I feel like all financial advisors are not created equal. One size does not fit all. And you do have, I'll tell everyone, in your planned giving introduction videos, I think it's 11 minutes and 39 seconds, the number 3 video in that series is basically what's the advantage for financial advisors. So
Yes.
For anyone here to listen to just that and figure out that there are 2 things that you can focus on and go after in your discussion and your conversation. But you're absolutely right. Not everyone is tuned into all of that. And that's why I felt like maybe there's a designation. I am working with a lot of planned giving people and the CAPs, which I fell into quite by accident, but I am very happy about that. Bruce Geist turned me on to Planned Giving of Arizona, and it's full of people like that. So that's a benefit I've already gained, and I thank you for seconding that and putting your information on that. That video is great.
Great. Well, and Tamisa, let me mention to you. Oh, sorry, Cammie, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we have revised the class. So in the new class that will be happening on the 20th of July, Bruce has added a section to teach about donor advised funds. Number 1, just to let you guys know, you'll be learning a little bit more about that. Number 2, they may not have a designation now, but now that we've gotten our designation for the realtors put together, we will be creating one for the financial advisors that can come from our group. And number 3, this is all getting in the weeds a lot. And I just want our real agents to change to know we don't have to understand all of this stuff. We don't need to know all of this stuff. Our favorite saying is, do what you do best, refer the rest. So when people start asking you questions about all this stuff, you say, thank you for your generous questions. Let me put you in touch with our real estate team, because Bruce
can try to do that.
Well, Bruce can handle these questions a lot better. And these financial advisors, when we find the right ones, and we are not here to convince, push, pull, persuade anyone. We bring this up to ferret out. You guys are all here out of thousands of realtors who've heard about this. So we're only looking for the ones who raise an eyebrow and get it a little bit. But those financial advisors are going to be able to put you in front of the nonprofits that they love, because they're going to want to learn more and share more. Go ahead, Dr. James.
Oh, can I say something? A comment
Sure.
On what Tamisa said. When you said that when you present something to someone within an organization, not a financial advisor, and their comment is, okay, let me go present it to the board. So probably the best response, which you probably already do this because you sound like you're pretty active here. Probably the best response, because how are they going to present it to the board? They only just heard it. They don't really understand it. So probably the best response is, I would love to do that presentation for the board for you, or get, whoever, Bruce, Russell, whatever. But but you don't want them to present it because they're not qualified to present it. So you want one of our qualified people to make that presentation.
Oh, absolutely, Claudia. That's where Bruce comes in, and that was my next comment was, let's get a Zoom call with Bruce, because he's the guy that will, pull it all together and give them that information. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing too, which I think Cammie, was getting at, that when you have the designation, but even before you have the designation, just to educate them, we should be, and maybe each of us individually with financial advisors that we know, can be putting together a presentation for them, which will be Zoom attended by one of our experts here, so that we're just kind of the facilitator, and we're not really the presenter, but we can, set things up for financial advisors to attend.
Absolutely.
Oh, Jessica here. I'm driving, so I turned off my video. So I really like what Dr. James said, what has worked and challenges we've had. What's worked really well for me is to pique the interest of nonprofits. And where my challenges or I get stuck at is they say that time to listen on Thursday to the webinar doesn't work for us. Or other comments I've had, I don't have time to listen to a webinar. I almost feel like we need to have this in-between piece, whether it be a short video or a short brochure or something else to go ahead and pique their interest. What I'm also envisioning is something for each real agent of change to have their own landing pages created, something very simple that says, are you a nonprofit? Are you interested in donating? Do you work, do you volunteer at a nonprofit? And they click which one, and then they opt in and get a short little brief info, and then we can market, drip campaign them on a regular basis so they don't forget who we are. So they don't think, well, who was that real agent of change? Who was that person?
Great idea, Jessica.
We've already created those. We posted them in the group. So they're not finished, but we have started. So for example, if you go to therock.com/Cammie Baker, you'll see an example of one. We are creating one for Bruce Geis. We're creating one for Lori Lane, different people. So it's in beta, but we are putting that together.
Well, look,
Thank you. That's really exciting.
One thing that Russell mentioned earlier was speed and simplicity. And I go back to the example of the gift from National Jewish Health, who have 20 fundraisers around the country. And this one fundraiser in Washington, D.C. took a question from one of the people in her book, and she had the simplest answer in the world. Thank you for your generous offer. Let me get my real estate team on the phone. And she didn't need to know a thing more about real estate than that, other than thank you for your generous offer. Let me get the real estate team on the phone. And that deal, went start to finish in 87 days, I think, and was a significant uptick of a contribution from that woman over the years that, previous that she had been making to the company. Really, this is a question of how do we make this message simple, but impactful at the same time, because Jessica's right. People don't necessarily have the time for, webinars and Zoom calls, but we've got to make this message simple. And we've got to make it reassuring to get enough interest. And we've got to somehow demonstrate to them that the results are going to be significantly impactful to the organization, something they cannot ignore. Now, I don't really, Russell, after 4 years of doing this, that still remains a challenge for me to inspire a nonprofit to pick up the arms and do something with it rather immediately. It's shocking how many nonprofits come back to us a year later and say, I remember a conversation we had. We've decided to reintroduce the conversation to our group, but it took them a year to get there. And I think this group here is finding out that it's a long lead time unless we can create phrases and words that convey simplicity, speed, safety, and impactful results rather immediately. You know, these deals that we work on average, don't take more than about 90 days. And they're hundreds of thousands of dollars to the organization. And we need to be able to convey that message in a way that inspires them to act. I know that I can see the faces of 3 or 4 individuals on this Zoom who have dedicated themselves to this effort and are probably feeling a little frustrated that a deal hasn't yet come through the door that they can claim as their own.
You know, if I may, I just wanted to piggyback on what Bruce and Jessica said. Yeah, you know, I think it's really important for us to come up with something that really shows the nonprofit immediately the real value of what we're offering, because you know, and like Jessica, I've heard well, I don't have time to listen to the webinar. Guess what? If they really believed that they could get a check for $550,000 at the end of 90 days, they'd find the time to listen to the webinar. So if they don't have the time, it means they don't see the actual value in it.
I agree, Michael. There's got to be urgency in our voice. I feel like a lot of the times we come to them begging for them to listen. Hey, if you don't mind, would you mind sitting in on this webinar? Would it be okay if I talk to your board? Like, we're begging them for something. We need to let them know, look, we've got a check for $500,000 with your name on it. You can have in 90 days. You need to make a board meeting for this. You don't need to wait till 3 months from now. You need to let them know now. There needs to be urgency. But there's also a level of us shifting this from going after the nonprofits to going to the financial advisors who already have the donors. Because when we walk in that nonprofit with a check, they're going to want to listen then. So we need the donors more than we need the nonprofits, because at the end of the day, guys, we don't need the nonprofit to approve anything. We don't even need the nonprofits in these conversations. We need the donors. And that's where the financial advisors come in. Can you speak on that a little bit, Dr. James?
Yeah, so so this is actually really great because, you know, for me to understand the barriers that you're running into when you're working with the nonprofits, and that helps me to be able to craft those messages that can be really effective. And you know, and Bruce is right on with that. You know, let me get the real estate team together to you know, thank you very much for this. Let me get the real estate team together to help out with this. That can be very helpful it can be very helpful for the fundraiser, but just trying to think through what is going to appeal, and it can depend upon which audience we're dealing with within the nonprofit, what is motivational to them. You know, and in many cases for the staff member, especially the staff member who's not a fundraiser, showing what, you know, look, nonprofit managers tend to be risk-averse herd animals. So if you get the first nonprofit that you work with that has a good experience, that's sort of your entry to the second and to the third and to the fourth is the, hey, I've been working with this organization, feel free and, you know, talk to them. They suggested, or I think you might be interested in these opportunities as well, in case something comes along. And again, for the fundraiser, the motivation to get you in front of the board is that the board members are the major donors, and they're more likely to make the gift if you introduce the idea. So that may be an approach. We also want to get in front of the board members because again, just as a general practice building approach, if you get in front of people with capacity as the expert on real estate, that's a good thing. That's going to, build long term in a number of different directions. Yeah, I like what Cammie, what you wrote there, that other nonprofits that have received checks, and showing what others are doing, and if you can name names, then that can be helpful as well. These organizations tend to want to go with the crowd. They tend to want to cluster with what others are doing, and so so if there's an example transaction that someone in the group has done with a big name organization or two, those are the names you want to mention, when it's because that's what's going to be motivational. I'll stop talking there because this is just really great to hear what is helpful.
Got something in there. I put it into the chat as well, Dr. James. I've met with many nonprofits. A part of what I was already doing before Cammie and I connected was donating 10% of our commissions to nonprofits. So we have about 70, maybe more than that now, that we've already connected with, already given them a baby check compared to what this will be, right? So they already know the name and they're like open to having that conversation with me, which has been really fun. But when I get in there and I say, look, the average donation is $550,000. What could you do with that? Think about, at the beginning, we were kind of approaching it as you'll never have to fundraise again. Think of how much of your brain power could be going into serving the people that you work with instead of this fundraising piece. Oh, bad reactions. People are like, I like my fundraising. I like my events. I like my people. I like the control, right? I even had one that did a call specifically with Bruce. She just couldn't get over she's writing grants, right? She's doing these fundraising things, and she's like, well, could we maybe advertise it's a little less money? I'm thinking, what? No, this is crazy. So there's a mindset in there that we've been stroking the wrong way with it. And we're learning as we go through the process to come back out in a different way. Obviously not going directly to the nonprofits right now with that, but I just wanted to give you that feedback too. Maybe you were already aware and I just was approaching it wrong, but they don't want to give up those things at the moment.
You're absolutely right. I have discovered that the nonprofits feel threatened that we're going to maybe snag their donors when we're actually wanting to open their minds and shift their thinking. It's a mindset shift for all parties, all layers, no matter how you look at it. But it's our responsibility. And I think that's where Dr. Russell James can help us with that terminology in what Bruce said, the most simplified, easy manner to express without them feeling like we are taking control or wanting their donors or wanting to, be in control of their nonprofit. And I think I have experienced that with a couple of nonprofits I've spoken to. They don't want to turn over their list. They don't, and not that we want it, but we just want to help them get a mindset shift. And it's breaking that barrier.
To me,
said the right words, Dr. James.
This is a really big point, because in the beginning, people immediately, it was like, you can't have our donors. And so now I even make it a point to let them know, you talk to your donors, or we'll do whatever, however we can help. We can talk to 10 of them or 10,000 of them, or you can talk to them. We don't have to talk to them at all. We can post on social media. But there is something that has happened to these nonprofits in the past where people have come in and tried to rape and pillage their donor list. And that is the first thing they're worried about. It's something that we need to address right up front. But I'm going to say it again. Let's not get too focused on going after the nonprofits. Let's go get donors instead of nonprofits. Because the nonprofit, when you walk in with a check, I promise you they're going to say thank you. They don't need to approve receiving a check. We're all trying to get them to go to their donors. But if everyone on here has experience, they're not doing it. So let's shift and let's talk to the financial advisors And one of the things Dr. James is going to help us with is those surveys and some simple 5-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute presentations, whether it's one advisor or 3, or we get in front of the whole 200 people at Edward Jones in our local area. Like, how can we talk to them to get the donors to the table? That's what I want to know.
So I have a question. All nonprofits have fundraising events like that. They'll have an annual dinner or an annual event of some sort. So if they don't want to give us the list, which I can understand that because they all are competing with each other for the same donors. Can we speak at an event where we don't actually know the names of the donors, but we're just presenting the ideas? And then we say at the end, if you have some interest in this, instead of contacting us, contact, head honcho, and, we'll work it out.
I do see a ton of value with heading it from both ends, right? Like we've been going to the nonprofit side. We see how that works. So now we're headed over to the financial planner side, which is an obvious open door once we know how to speak to them. But Dr. James, the piece that Cammie and I were talking about with the surveys that we could be providing to our nonprofits to send to their donor list. And if there's a response of anything other than no, this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard of, right? They would come back to us or through them in some way. I think that's super valuable because it gives us a reason, it gives us something to give them that will be of extreme value to them. So no, it's not, maybe not a today thing, but it's like a dripping on them over time. I have several of the nonprofits I've met with that are putting us, hey, we now take gifts of real estate, and they're getting questions about it, and they're getting some response from it. So I'm looking really forward to these surveys that maybe we can do that to the nonprofits while we're working on the presentations to the financial planners. Thank you for taking your time to do that with her. I'm so appreciative.
Can I share something? I really appreciate this. My name is Sarah Vincent, and I run a nonprofit. It's called Soul Purpose, and it's small. It's me. I work with at-risk youth and their families. And I think this is brilliant. I don't have 500, 2,000, 20,000 donors. And I know a lot of other agencies that work with anti-trafficking that are small on scale would be extremely open to this, because they don't have a huge donor list. They don't have a huge email list, and they're not getting a ton of grants. Not that they can't, but that's not the vein that they're in right now. And I don't know, maybe Doctor, you could speak to this, is the amount of grant you get in competition with a donation like this, like you wouldn't get as much grant if you got this size of 500,000 real estate. That would be my question, maybe why some of the nonprofits are not wanting that, because I don't know specifically on certain grants if you have to say that you're getting other donations, and then they would not be able to get that grant. But for me as a smaller nonprofit, and I'm not saying just focus on the smaller ones, but I guarantee you those of us that are just the feet on the ground, that are just a handful of us, we're going to be extremely open to this. I don't want to go out there and do 400 fundraisers. I want to do the work. I want to do the work, meet the kids, meet the clients, do that. That's my specialty. So I'm not a grant writer. I'm working on all that, but for me, I love connecting with Cammie because this is just a brilliant idea to really help provide the funds necessary. And honestly, I need real estate. I'm building a facility. So, there are things within what I do. And I think there's a lot of smaller ones that would and I don't know how to target that specific audience, but that would be very open to what you all provide.
So let me throw out an idea here, and apologies, Cammie, this is back working with nonprofits because I'm thinking about how to break through that wall. What might be of interest, and I'm thinking about if we put together a presentation, something like how to ask for a gift of real estate in 3 minutes, right? Or in 30 seconds, whatever, just something very simple where we're just coming to provide value to the fundraisers who are scared about asking for these gifts. And if we do a simple, training presentation for, that's just one of our many audiences, but one audience, how to ask for a gift of real estate in 3 minutes, let's say. And all of this is a way to get back to that phrasing that Bruce used, and my handwriting's not legible. Bruce, what was that phrase? Let me get my real estate team on the phone. And you're muted there, Bruce. But go ahead.
But what she said was, "Thank you for your generous offer. Let me get my real estate team on the phone." I mean, she had someone who was interested, as opposed to the concept we're kind of talking about right now, which is how to get people interested.
Right.
Right.
But
I think it was thank you for your generous question. I really like that wording, because then it
The point of that was to take off of the fundraisers back the need to be at all fluent in the many, many, many questions that do arise with a donor about a gift of real estate. They're usually all the same, but there's like 12 of them. And sooner or later I have to answer all 12 questions. But you don't lead with the technical information, you lead with something else. And I think it's the something else, Dr. James, that we are struggling for. What do we lead with? I love the idea, love the idea. I actually wrote a document called How to Ask for Gifts of Real Estate. It was the worst document I ever wrote. It was 6 pages long. It was intended to give information to the board, to the executives, to the fundraising staff, to the people who answer the phone, so that everyone had their way of responding, and it just became like a nightmare. The idea of how to ask for a gift of real estate in 3 minutes, that's a bingo to me.
So as I'm looking at it here, my thought is, if you can have this, and of course, the presentation is going to be longer than 3 minutes. The point is that the fundraiser can ask for it in 3 minutes. So maybe we could do a 3-minute presentation. But the point is, if you can get the fundraisers in the room and say, we get to the magic phrase, let me get my real estate team on the phone. And then you stop and say, now, how many of you have a real estate team, right? And then everybody who doesn't raise their hand say, you've got one now.
You've got one now.
You've got one now.
We often say that. We often say you've got your real estate team right down the hall from you, if you collaborate with a third-party nonprofit that does this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of the hook point that, because ultimately, to do these transactions, we need them to talk to donors. It's great if we can talk to donors, but we need them being out talking to donors. So if we can train them, and also to make it where it's not scary, because your goal is not to answer their questions. Your goal is to get the next meeting. And that next meeting is after the let me get my real estate team on the phone. Let's when can you meet again, and we can present some options for you to take a look at. And the point being that most fundraisers, when you say, here's the magic phrase, and they look at that and say, well, I don't have a real estate team. This is a small nonprofit. This is, and to be able to do that mindset shift where we're here we lead with value, right, for the fundraiser. This is what we are providing that, that can make your life easier, because fundraisers are really scared about non-cash transactions because they feel like it's going to be a pop quiz, right? Well, what about the carry forward capital gains tax and the, the recapture of the, section 7320 and, that, and, they're just like, oh, no, I'm the, yay for our charity person, write a check, and so, they get the deer in the headlights and they don't ever want to do that again. And so if we can shift that mindset to say, you shouldn't ever do that. You want those questions so that you can give the magic phrase, let me get my real estate team on the phone. Let's put together some options for you to take a look at and see if there's anything of interest for you there. That to understand that that's the goal. And then in fact, so I've got a new book coming out that's called Socratic Fundraising. And it's all about how do you raise money by asking questions. And a big part of it deals with having wealth conversations, and that oftentimes fundraisers can be scared of. So I could see this being part of the fitting in well with that. So that's very helpful. Other thoughts, comments, objections? How are people? What are people thinking on this or any other approaches that might be helpful?
Yeah, I can't wait for you.
Dr. James, you were just speaking so quickly. Did I miss when you were talking about having these Socratic conversations where you ask questions? Did you reference that you made a video of this or something that we can access?
So let me think. I will have a lot of material that will be coming out in the fall. That's my big project I'm working on right now. It's a new book called Socratic Fundraising. And so I've just done the first presentations on that for some different fundraising groups. And so getting that built out right now as we speak. So this actually dovetails in really well. So I have as part of that book, I have one presentation on Socratic fundraising. I have one presentation that's an hour-long presentation on how to ask for a gift in a will, which, if you think fundraisers are scared of asking for a real estate gift, start talking to people about they're going to die and can we have some of your stuff when you die? They get scared of that a lot. And so this fits in that same kind of that same kind of category. Where the idea would be to put together a presentation and not just certainly, yeah, and we can think through what's most helpful to you. We can certainly build out different length of online presentations. Here's a YouTube presentation, but also here's a slide set for you to do a simple presentation. That's those could all be pieces depending upon what's most helpful to you.
Thank you.
You do have a link in your information that I got from you through LinkedIn that's on the Socratic.
Right. Yeah. So that's some of my newest presentations. By the way, if for any folks here, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll send you links to everything I've ever done. It's basically all on major gifts of assets, a lot of legacy gift stuff as well. Not all of it's going to be directly relevant to you, but you'll have connections to all of those things.
It's very valuable, very informative and helpful. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And I just would like to say one thing about nonprofits. That's not been my focus. I'm focused mainly on financial advisors. However, you do get into all of it when you're doing it. But I think it's important that we try. I don't like to use the word try, but I think it's an effort we should make to get on advisory boards of these nonprofits as a realtor, and because they're looking for allies and affiliates. And I think as a realtor, we can kind of plant the seeds as we go and be more beneficial to them. So that's my little extra take on nonprofits.
So to me, so remind me what has worked best for you in terms of getting financial advisors to use your services? What's the kind of, foot in the door, and then what leads to that first transaction?
My foot in the door mainly with them has been working with seniors. So they have the senior demographics that when they realize they need to downsize, smart size, get into, assisted living, what have you, I've typically been the person that they've contacted. I first initially set out writing emails or sending emails to financial advisors of clients that I got permission to speak to their advisors and say, hey, if you don't mind me talking to your advisor, I can let them know that these services are available to all their clients. Because those clients that became my clients through the financial advisor's referral said, my friend needs to know this, my so-and-so needs to know this. And I thought, well, that's a foot in the door to be an added value to a financial advisor. So I started out doing that years ago with just in the senior move management and real estate aspect of it. So what I've done that works best for me is that I have these relationships already with them. So now I'm saying, hey, because I've had clients that say to me, I don't have heirs, I don't know what to do next. And I refer them sometimes to financial advisors because they don't have everything ready, and they don't have a plan of action for that next chapter of life. They don't have documents, facts, figures. So I may refer them to a financial advisor. But if that advisor I'm speaking to is like, hey, you might want to offer this because these people don't have heirs, or they don't like their heirs, they need another option. So that's what's worked for me, is just the conversations, building relationships that I'm now nurturing into a different mindset and aspect with the charitable giving.
Thank you.
If that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. Thank you.
Another idea around, someone was mentioning how these nonprofits have their annual fundraisers or their golf tournaments that they're doing this time of year. One of the things I've been suggesting is, back on the theme of this is about looking for donations, but it's also about building relationships and being seen and heard in your marketplace as the expert. One of you mentioned something about getting on a stage. I wouldn't go so far as to ask to get on the stage with most of these people, because remember, they're very protective of their people. But what we can do is offer to be at the event as an ambassador of charitable gifting of real estate, to simply answer questions that people have and be able to walk around and mingle. And creating even a survey, Dr. James, I was going to ask you to help with this kind of a survey too. Imagine we've got a little card, we're at a golf tournament, we've got 100 cards with survey questions, the same Socratic ones that teach them as they fill them out. And we let them know, hey, at this event, one lucky person is going to donate $500 to this donation. The donation is going to be made in their name of $500. Would you like to be one of the names that could be pulled to donate that money? Well, of course, everybody's going to say, yeah, I want my name in the fishbowl. Awesome. Fill out this survey and you can put your business card in the fishbowl, and you might be the one whose name is on the check when we give it to them at the end. And these surveys will help to educate them on what charitable real estate is. And one of the questions on the survey can be, here at the Boys and Girls Club, one of the things we do is have our real estate team educate our donors. Would you be interested in sitting in on a webinar? Yes, somewhat, of course, please tell me more, etc. So that we are basically inviting them to sit in on a way to get educated on how this works, and just have a friendly interaction. What a wonderful way to go up and introduce yourself to people at these events with these surveys, and you're gathering leads, you're educating, and at the end of the event, you had your mortgage company or somebody pony up the $500 if you don't want it to be you. And you and Regency Mortgage go up to the front of the room and pull out of the fishbowl with 100 business cards, the name of someone who's going to get the donation in your honor. So it's just another creative way of how can you meet and mingle with high net worth people in a very different, exclusive way that no one else is doing. I guarantee if you do something like that, you're going to get business from that long before a donation comes in, and you're going to want to do more of that, and there's going to be more donations that come because of it.
Love it.
So
Relationship.
So let me jump on a good idea that Michael had typed in about having a catchphrase. I will say that one of the phrases that tests really well in very different contexts, if you want to use a phrase, Michael, is I help donors give smarter. Ask me how. So so for example, we've done tests on a website where we say, do you want to read about, say, gift planning? No. Do you want to read about planned giving? No. Do you want to read about how to give smarter? Yes, we got actually a 5 to 6-fold increase of people who are interested. And here's the funny thing, when we then asked them, what are you expecting to see when you click on this button? Are you expecting to see, information about gifts of real estate or gifts from a retirement account or estate tax, this whole list? The list is identical between what they were expecting when they clicked on gift planning and what they were expecting on when they clicked on how to give smarter. It's just that
Right.
when we call it how to give smarter, they're interested in it, and if we call it gift planning, they're not interested in it. Some great ideas there, and in fact, this could tie back into, if you're doing that presentation for fundraisers on, how to ask for a gift of real estate in 3 minutes, one of the options, we talk them through, here's the phrase to say, here's how you open the conversation, here's the next phrase to say, ultimately leading up to the let me get my real estate team on the phone. One of those options can be, let me ask for you. I can, if you want me to speak at a small gathering, takes me 3 minutes, just part of your event, happy to do that as well. Not that everyone's going to go for that, but you could put it in as one of the options in the in the presentation. So some great thoughts there.
Would it be as effective? I like the idea that Michael had. I help donors give smarter. Ask me how. Would it be as effective? I help fundraisers work smarter. Ask me how. I mean, is that just too damn vague?
I think they would be, I think that's derogatory, or they would take it as derogatory, that they already don't work smart enough. I don't know. I don't know. Just my first thought.
So Bruce, here's what I've found works well with fundraisers. And I tell you this, it's funny because during the pandemic, everything is online like we are now, right? And so I had the opportunity to do identical presentations, one of which was talking about essentially how to raise planned gifts. And the other one was talking about how to raise major gifts of assets. And my attendance at seminar version 2 was about 6-fold greater. So there's something about, and I know you all don't use this language, but Bruce is more familiar with it, that planned giving terminology doesn't work well, whereas fundraisers, insiders, they love major gifts. That's really attractive to insiders. And so if we just tag on to that, major gifts of assets, I help you, with major gifts of assets. That's, that's where I think the interest can be high.
Right. And I'll be honest with you, since you started saying that phrase a while back, I've adapted that to a lot of the things that I say these days. This whole phrase, major gifts of assets, is the shortest way to talk about what it is we do.
Yeah, it works. And I have to tell you that it fits everything that I see in the research, which shows that the biggest for the nonprofit, the biggest transformation you can make for your donor is to get them to not donate from disposable income, which is the cash gifts that they're going to compare to what they just spent at Starbucks, but to get them to donate out of their wealth. Wealth is not held in cash. Wealth is held in appreciated assets. And the first time you get them to donate from wealth, it can be transformational. And so that's, that is that major gifts of assets is really the camel's nose in the tent that, that once we're talking that, then there's all these other pieces. And Cami, this may be another way to engage with the advisors if you've got some that are charitably inclined, because those are going to be the ones that'll be most likely to generate transactions for you anyway. If you say, I'm working with fundraisers on major gifts of assets, I do the real estate piece, but I'm not doing the stocks, IRAs, mutual fund piece. can we work together with these folks to sort of offer the full service of major gifts of assets? What about that idea?
That's
Well-
that's a brilliant idea.
Tisha and I were just talking about that last week when we had our call, and taking it to the next extreme. You don't need to have just one financial advisor that follows you around all these meetings. Every financial advisor that's going to be open to this kind of conversation has a nonprofit they love. So let's say there's 10 of them in your area. You tell those financial advisors, look, I'll talk about the real estate part, but I need your help talking to your nonprofit about how this works. So now each financial advisor is opening the door for you to come to their nonprofit to help them with their own nonprofit. They're going to get business. You're getting in front of a whole new audience, rinse and repeat. Go do it at the Boys and Girls Club. Go do it at the church. Go do it. But don't bring the same financial advisor. Go with the financial advisor that loves that nonprofit, and just have a presentation that you can do all over town and get in front of their audience.
You know, I really like that idea, Cammie, because you're at that point, you're not coming to the financial advisor to sell them something. You're coming to them as a business generator. Like, I am working with these fundraisers that work with high net worth folks. I am helping them with the major gifts of assets, but I only do this piece. Can we work together? You know, are you interested in charitable financial planning, so that we could work together, so that we could, you know, team up to get you in front of high net worth individuals. So that may be helpful. You know, as we're talking with Tamisa, the idea, I always think if you can lead with value, that's going to be attractive to these advisors. And if that value is, I'm working with fundraisers who are connected with high net worth folks, but I want to be able to present the full package, you know, and especially if we get to the point of we've got presentations that have both sides of it. I want, you know, I want somebody who can execute the other side of it to be able to refer them to, or if we could do this together. Yeah, that, you know, and that the whole idea being, will you stand in front of high net worth audiences with me? You know,
Well,
that's a great introduction.
not only that, but we can say, you know, we would like to do the real estate part for the nonprofit that you love. We know that they're already using your skills for all the other aspects. So let's get in front of them together, because you know that the nonprofit's really not using their skills the way that they would like. So basically what you're saying is, hey, you've got this nonprofit you love. You've been sitting on their board and doing all these things. You've been wanting them to work with you, but they haven't been. Now I'm bringing you an opportunity to show up and shine and be the expert in front of your peers that you already know so well. So in other words, it's just a great way to get into their nest. You know, they've already got an audience. You're helping them build their relationship with their own audience, and you're coming along for the ride. They get to know you too.
Well, and it may expand their relationships too. I think that's what I also heard.
Well, one of the things
Because if they can
talked
team
about,
with us in real estate, then they can expand. They can probably expand the portfolio that they're working on already.
well, what we were talking about with Tisha and I were, when you talk to that financial advisor, you can say, hey, you sit on the board of the Boys and Girls Club. Let's do this talk there so that I can help them understand real estate and they'll know even more about your expertise. And why don't you actually invite your high net worth clients to sit in? So in other words, we're inviting them to fill the room for us with people that they want to do business with. We're giving them a platform to show up as the expert. We can say to them, you know, whoever the high net worth folks are that you've been wanting to do business with, invite them to sit in on the presentation too. We'll do it on Zoom.
I'm going to have to leave in just a minute for an appointment. I want to say, you know, how much I appreciate all of you being on the phone. Cammie, thank you so very much for arranging this with Dr. James and Dr. Russell James. You are everyone's hero here because you so well underpin all the things we're trying to do. One of the things that I like is the frustration in this group. The frustration means that there is an opportunity that is sizable that people aren't picking up quite yet, which means it's a ripe venture. This is not a waste of anyone's time. This is going to pay off for whoever sticks with it, because it is such a big opportunity. And so few people really are very well educated with it. And so I love the work that everyone in this call is doing to expand that education, and our attempt here to make it simpler, more impactful. And the thing that I'm going to take away from here, I've made a page full of notes. The thing I like the best: how to ask for a gift of real estate in 3 minutes. Wow.
I like that too.
That would, how many calls could you make in a day if you were trying to teach someone to ask for a gift of real estate in just 3 minutes? That's great. I love you all. I appreciate you all. And thanks so very much for all of you being here.
Thanks, Bruce. Bye.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
Michael Jones had a question. I want to make sure. He's brought more nonprofits to us than anyone, and have actually gotten the Parkinson's.org and constructionangels.org to the table. Michael, you have a question?
I guess it was more of just reminiscing about what's going on from my perspective. We've been, I don't find it difficult talking to people about what we do, and they're either interested or they're not. And if they are, we sort of open the door with the VP of philanthropy, and then that meeting usually goes well. And then she introduces us to the comptroller. And if that goes well, we get the CEO. And it just seems to be a process. But even then, it seems like even once they think it's a good idea and they go, yeah, we should do this, it still seems to be then they kind of get stuck with the things that Cammie and I had talked about, is they want to know how to then present this to their donors. And I try to keep it really simple. I just say, all you need to do is educate them that you now accept real estate. I keep it that simple for them. Just let everybody know that you accept real estate. Somebody's going to raise their hand and want to know about it. And then we're the real estate office down the hall that answers the questions for you. Where I'm rarely talking directly to the fundraisers themselves, but that begs the question in the supervisor's mind about they want to know the next step. And I know that Cammie's been working on, materials for marketing. How do they let their donors know? Through social media, through emails, through newsletters, through their website. And then some of them are doing, like different events like golf tournaments and so forth. And so having materials there that open the door, that open their eyes to the education process, that they now have this opportunity and to get more information about it. And I know that Cammie's working on some creative ways to get people to think about it a little bit more than just say, oh, you accept real estate. Like, okay, the surveys I think are going to be helpful. It's a way for the fundraisers in that organization to open the door with their donors without being confrontational in a sense, or without them feeling nervous about not knowing what they need to know, kind of thing. So I guess I feel like we're at a stage, and it's been growing, and it can only grow so fast, take on so many things, and between Danielle and Cammie and so forth, coming up with creative ideas about how we can help the nonprofits in their head, once they've already said, yeah, this is a good idea, how to get them, over the hump of like, okay, let's roll with this. Let's start telling your donors about it. And they kind of want to know how to roll it out, how to educate their staff. One of the things that I tell them is, let us do Zoom calls for your staff. Let us do Zoom calls for your financial advisors within your organization that can then tell their clients that they already have a relationship with this nonprofit. So, it should be easy for them to talk about, hey, here's a way that their clients who may have a need for charitable contributions can take advantage of something that they haven't done before. And lastly, I'll mention that I probably could use your help because I am a certified senior advisor and I am a member of the Society of Certified Senior Advisors. And they have opportunities to write in their newsletters, in their magazines, and to do CE calls. I think it's just a matter of putting together a nice little succinct blurb about like what the class would be about. And I think between having, you and Bruce, maybe Cami, myself, having a little part of it would keep it fun and educational and something that I think that they would appreciate. But I think it's a matter of writing that little hook letter as to why they want to, present this to their members. But you guys want to get in front of financial advisors, and we have a very golden, easy opportunity to make that happen. I don't know if I asked a question in there.
That was all great. You gave me a bunch of assignments, which is great. I'll be working on all of those pieces.
Well, Dr. James, we want to be respectful of your time. We've gone over an hour. So if anybody has a burning desire, let's hear it now. I've got all the notes that I can share with everyone as well. Any final thoughts from anyone? What about from you, Dr. James?
No, this is great. I'm hoping to, again, have some materials for you to look at. This has been really, really helpful so that I'm producing things that will hopefully hit those felt needs, and then we can test them out, see what works better, worse, tweak them, get better and better at this. So very excited about the possibilities here.
Can I ask when we might start getting some surveys?
You can ask, but I've got to get the book series done first, and I'm working on it as fast as I can. And so you're next up. So I will keep you updated. Apologies for the delay on that. Professors are so slow. It's annoying.
You're so
My-
so generous. You are.
My comment that I wanted to make is just how much I love the shared purpose of this group
That is
and
right.
how we're all working to get better individually as we work better to support each other for the larger purpose. And it's just wonderful to be here.
I have one more question, Dr. James.
Yeah.
You probably speak at a lot of major events for nonprofit organizations. Is that correct?
So I speak primarily to fundraisers and financial advisors. I'm not predominantly speaking directly to donors, although I do that some, but
So
that's not the major
nonprofit
focus.
organizations like
Yes, yes,
big where the fundraisers get together.
exactly. Yes.
So I'm curious what kind of response you're getting from these nonprofits after you've opened their eyes to donations of non-cash assets. I mean, are you getting a line of people afterwards, and how many of them follow up on it? I mean, you're sitting there giving them the golden goose, and I'm wondering like what their response is.
Yeah, it's been kind of this iterative process where I'm learning as things go along. So for example, we've got the research results that Cami referred to, looking at essentially all the nonprofits in the country and their fundraising growth over 6 years. And one of the massive indicators of who's going to be growing their fundraising 5 years later was whether or not they were accepting any gifts of real estate or stocks. And so you do get a lot. And then when I talk about the psychology of it, this is why it's transformational for the donor, you get a lot of head nods. But the next piece is getting that, how do I do this? How do I make that ask? And so that's why, I've been spending a lot of time trying to make that easy. And this idea of how to ask for a gift of real estate in 3 minutes would be in that same context of, which I think, Michael, fits a lot of what you're saying, which is, you get through, you get the head nods, but then, okay, now what? How do we ask? How do we deliver that message in a way that's going to lead to the transaction?
I think it's critical for them to know that there's a third party, just like somebody who could take a car for them, to me, it's the same damn thing.
It is.
You
Yeah.
have people that, donate cars, we just help them donate real estate. I mean, it's that simple.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have to admit that I've had more doors opened since I talked charitable real estate and real estate giving than I did in all the senior aspects of that entity and that element. The doors are open, the people are in awe, they're excited, they want to hear more, they want to introduce you to this person and that person, but then it goes nowhere. So it's getting that next step that keeps keeps you reeling in so that they can reap the benefits, because it kind of stops, and that's kind of where the frustration is. It just kind of stops midstream. But this was great information. It's great meeting you and talking. Are you open to interviews at all? Because I'm working on a TV show with PBS and I'd love to have you.
Sure. Happy to do that.
I'm going to stick with that. Sure. All right. I'll stay in touch.
Good girl.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Cammie, for putting this together. This is wonderful.
Well, anything we can do to keep our relationship moving forward. And as I always ask, if there's anything we can do for you, we don't know what it is how the Real Agents of Change can support you and your mission, but we are here to do that. And this tribe will grow to hundreds and thousands very quickly. So any way we can help you, let us know.
Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right, guys, have a great night. I'm going to put this recording in the group as soon as I can. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hey, everybody.